Hey people, so I've just watched a debate between Piers Morgan and Alex Jones. This has been widely publicised online on a lot of the groups I support, and I thought, okay, I'm going to check this out. I had a preconception of what it would be like, and the preconception has been, in fact, the interview was even more intense than I'd expected. But basically, Piers Morgan is an anchor on CNN. He's a British citizen, former tabloid editor. First of all, before I get into the video, what I'd like to point out, I'd like to say Piers Morgan isn't my favourite person in the world. I'm not a huge fan of his tabloid past. He's not my favourite person in the world. But, and this is a big but, I have enormous respect for anybody who's going to stand up to the gun lobby. Piers has been consistent in his voicing of the issues here, in his voicing of the view, or of his position on the issue of gun control. He's been very consistent on that, and he has had the balls to stand up to the gun lobby. And for that, I'm grateful, because someone has to. But I also have a lot of respect for him, and I also have respect for Mayor Bloomberg in New York. He's been very vocal on this issue, as have numerous other brave Americans. And not just politicians or high-profile people. There's been lots of ordinary Americans are standing up. I've got respect for those NRA members who decide to cut up their cards. Quite honestly, I don't know much about this Alex Jones person. In fact, I knew nothing about him. I just heard conservative talk show hosts, so I had some preconceived ideas. The interview was, firstly, for the first 2 minutes it must have been, Piers Morgan introduced Alex Jones as the man who's leading the petition to have him deported. Their argument is Piers isn't an American citizen and he's there telling them what to do. Now, let's get some things clear. CNN is an international news network. It's an American-based news network, but it's international in its context. And they have several reporters and personnel that are not American. Piers is from an English-speaking country. So I see absolutely no reason why he shouldn't be. As far as I know, he hasn't broken any American laws. He has, I don't know whether he's taken up American residency or whatever, but unless I'm mistaken, there is something called the First Amendment, which is the right to freedom of expression. So you have these gun fanatics bitching about their Second Amendment being trampled, even though no one has proposed that all guns be taken away. And yet they're wanting to trample First Amendment rights. What they're essentially saying is because Piers is advocating gun control, we should kick him out of the country. Now, the entire format of the interview was a rant. Was basically Piers trying to get a word in, and this guy Alex Jones ranting. Most of it was absolute rubbish. Of course, he used the old predictable dictatorship analogy. Hitler, Mao and Stalin used gun control. That may be so, but the fact of the matter is dictators, by the nature of dictatorship, are interested in all sorts of control, including controls on freedom of speech and all sorts of things. So gun control, gun bans is just another part of that sort of control, and it proves absolutely nothing, because you have many democracies which have tough gun controls. So that falls this argument that only dictatorships use it flat on its face. And then you get other situations such as Yemen, Somalia, Honduras, countries with very high crime rates, and guns are freely available, they're floating around. So let's just debunk this notion that it's an aspect of dictatorship. Gun control is automatically aligned with dictatorship. There's another thing that dictators do, and that is impose freedom of speech restrictions. There's lots of things that dictators do, and it's just a pathetic argument when you disagree with someone's stance to accuse them of being a Nazi or to bring in that Nazi analogy. The gun lobby are always doing it, and it's just wearing thin. There's no way in hell that anyone in the gun control lobby wants America to become some sort of Maoist state, and that is not going to happen. It's just not. It doesn't surprise me that a lot of these gun fanatics, the likes of Alex Jones and Ted Nugent, are conspiracy nuts as well. If you watch the interview, it's floating around on numerous channels. You could see in there that Alex Jones clearly doesn't go along with the idea that assault weapons should be banned. Now, even people who who disagree with me and support gun rights, even many of them, many gun owners, this is a point, many gun owners agree that civilians shouldn't have assault weapons, military-style assault weapons, which have been used in the last 3 shootings, in Sandy Hook, in Aurora, and in the Oregon Mall shooting. They're military-style assault weapons. Why does any hunter need that? And as for the self-protection argument, even if that argument is valid, then a single shotgun would do the trick. Military-style assault weapon it's just a lunatic argument to suggest that, and that's essentially what Alex Jones seems to be suggesting in this interview, that every American citizen, all 315 million of them, should have a military-style assault weapon. Leaving aside the whole argument about protection, there's also the factor about children getting injured from guns being left around. But you know, one thing that gets me about the gun lobby, they'll always come out with this thing about, oh well, cars kill people, why don't we ban cars? Diseases kill people, why don't we ban diseases? It's just such a phony argument, because there's a fundamental difference. Firstly, with cars, yes, they do kill people, but it's not like there isn't safety mechanisms put in place. It's not like something isn't, it's not like there hasn't been policies to try and reduce road accidents, because there has been. But the fundamental difference is, and this is something the gun lobby will not acknowledge, cars are designed as methods of transport. Guns are designed as weapons to kill. That's a fact. Now they'll say, guns don't kill people, people kill people. But those people need guns to do it. And he kept reverting back to Britain, when Piers was making the very valid point about the United States gun homicide rate compared to Britain. Alex Jones tried to distort the situation. He claimed that our violent crime rates are up. Now, there's several factors to take into acknowledgement there. Violent crime in Britain is a problem, knife crime specifically. But whatever way you look at it, our violent crime rates are lower than the United States. That's a fact. That's simply a fact. And his argument that, in 1996, after the Dunblane School Massacre, we enacted very tough gun legislation. Now, gun crime did not rise after that. It did not rise after that. And I guarantee you, if measures weren't put in place, we wouldn't only be seeing a knife problem today, we'd also be seeing a gun problem. I don't know what the United States knife statistics are. I don't know whether they're worse or better than the UK, but I know for a fact, this is a cold, hard fact, their gun homicide rate is higher. And Alex Jones more or less conceded that at one point in the interview. He even admitted America's a violent society. Now, what I found quite amusing was when he was threatening Piers Morgan to restart 1776. That's not going to happen. Sorry to disappoint you, Alex, but it's not going to happen. I mean, and then, it's just the interview was quite predictable, but some of the things he was coming out with, towards the end, he started imitating a British accent. What point that proves, I don't know. Piers Morgan could have sat there and imitated a redneck asshole accent, but he didn't. He sat there respectfully and listened to the rants of this bigot, and then there was one point where Alex Jones was challenging him to a boxing match. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a gun lobby who are not real men. They're the fucking cards hiding behind their fucking guns. I'd like to see Alex Jones without his gun in the ring. I'm not even going to get into that, because it's just, this interview was so predictable but also so pathetic. And actually, I think Alex Jones has probably handed the gun control advocates a victory there. That interview, I suspect there'll be even gun owners cringing at that interview, how incredibly pathetic Alex Jones was. You know, to imitate the accent of your opponent in the debate is just beyond, it's just pathetically childish, and it doesn't prove anything. As for having Piers deported, well, what about the First Amendment, the right to freedom of expression? Doesn't Piers have a right? Oh wait, he's not an American citizen, so he doesn't have that right? It's quite pathetic. I think he closed the interview by claiming Britain's a communist country and that millions of people are fleeing this country. Let me tell you something. I'm a British citizen. I hate certain British domestic policies. That's normal in a democracy. Do I have any desire to flee this country? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And given a choice between living in a Britain with the problems we have, or living in some backward part of Texas with an insane gun culture, give me Britain any day. Any day. You know, these scumbags, these thugs, think that having a gun makes him a big man. He was in that interview bitching about how he's victimised, but he's the one that's yelling in Piers Morgan's face. He's the one that's making threats there and then for everyone to see. What an odious person. Even if you don't entirely agree with Piers Morgan's views, you would have to concede that for Alex Jones to sit there and imitate his accent is just pathetic, and it doesn't prove anything. And it really shows the calibre of the people who Piers is up against, and who other gun control advocates are up against. These are paranoid insurrectionists. They are deluded, in many cases far-right fanatics, who use this card about dictatorship as a broken record that has been disproven time and time again. The gun control advocates have absolutely no desire to confiscate every gun. Because for one thing, even if they wanted to, that wouldn't be physically possible. All they are doing... Piers Morgan started off that interview by making his position very clear. A nationwide ban on assault weapons, military-style assault weapons, and mandatory federal background checks. Those are why would any responsible gun owner have an issue with that? If you're a responsible gun owner with no criminal background check, another thing Piers called for was better mental health care. So he's not just focusing on guns. There's other issues. Mental health is a big issue. What's so unreasonable about those requests? Or those positions, I should say. As for Piers dictating to the American people what to do, he isn't dictating to anyone. He isn't saying, you must obey me. He's simply stating his view. And yes, he has strong views. But why not? He's an anchor. He's a news anchor. His job is to observe and to comment. And that's what he's doing. And America has a gun problem. When you have 5 of the worst US spree shootings taking place within the last 10 years, the 5 worst spree shootings in American history taking place within the last 10 years, then of course there has to be debate about that. And what the gun lobby are doing is trying to silence, what the gun advocates are trying to do is silence those who have a different view by branding them as dictators, by branding them communists, by branding them fascists, and it's just a pathetic distortion. And another thing about this whole argument about, oh, cars kill people and so on, and this argument that criminals are going to get guns anyway, that doesn't mean you don't try to do something about it. Because what gun nuts like Alex Jones are advocating is that anybody can have a weapon, including the criminals. In fact, I don't know why these assholes don't just hand the gangs weapons. He said that most gun homicides in America are gang-on-gang killings. Yet he is the one advocating that these people should freely get weapons. It's a deluded position. My respect for Piers has hugely risen after this interview. He stood there and he took it, and he let this asshole have his views, even though they were very threatening personal views against Piers Morgan. He stood there and took it, and let this asshole have his views. And I don't think the petition will work. I hope it doesn't. And I'll just close with one point. if the gun lobby kicks out Piers Morgan, I strongly believe in this country we should ban the NRA as a foreign terrorist organisation. Okay? I'm not. This video is not against gun owners. It's simply against gun fanatics like Alex Jones, who will not accept common sense arguments, who are so deranged, so paranoid, they can't even accept common sense arguments. I'll leave it there.